Hey folks, hope you're all doing well. This is the first video in a few weeks. I've been away on a photography work trip to Boston, but I'm now back in my safe European home, which is kind of nice to get home to my kids and stuff. You know, after like 2 days of these trips, because I'm a stay-home father, I like the first 2 days of like being free to do what I want, but after that, I just want to come home. I want to be with my kids and my wife. But it was a good trip. It was a really good trip. And it reminded me how much I hate Boston winters, because the weather was just horrendous. Well, I just told my daughter something. She asked me the question why she doesn't have a middle name and my son does. My son is named Hans Versteeg Baker. Versteeg after my wife's last name, and Baker after my name. And we named him that to always remind him of his Dutch heritage. He was born in the United States, and we didn't know we were going to live here, live in the Netherlands at the time. So we wanted him to always carry that Dutch culture, or whatever you want to call it, with him. But I had to explain this to my daughter, and I thought it would make an interesting video. My daughter is now 8 years old. When she was born, here in the Netherlands, you have to go to what's called the gemeentehuis. It's the town hall, and register your child and name them with the town. You don't do that at the hospital, and you have to do that within 2 days. So I'm the happy father. My daughter was born, and my wife had to have her in the hospital. It couldn't be a home birth because my wife was, I think, 41 or 42 at the time. And so I'm all happy. I go down to the gemeentehuis to do all the registering and stuff, and my wife is in the hospital with the baby, with Sophia. And we go through the stuff, and the clerk asked me, so what do you want to name your new daughter? You know, he was kind of happy for me too. And I said, I want to name her Sophia Versteeg Baker. Again, Versteeg for my wife's last name, and Baker, but Versteeg would be her middle name. And he looks at me. This is a true story, I kid you not. He looks at me and he goes, I need to consult my colleagues. He goes running off into the back. He comes back after 2 or 3 minutes. He goes, we're sorry, you cannot name your daughter Sophia Versteeg Baker. Her middle name, and I'm not kidding you, her middle name is not in the official book of names. And I looked at him. I was sort of surprised, and I said, you're telling me that there is like a department in the federal government that comes up with like a book of names that you can name your children? And he said, yes, that's right. And Versteeg is not in the book for middle names. And I said, well, this is interesting. I said, my daughter is also an American citizen and a Dutch citizen. And she's now 2 days old, you know. And I said, if we lived in America, I could name her, you know, Stovepipe Baker. It's not the government's business. And he said, well, here it is, and you can't name her Versteeg for a middle name. And so we're sort of not arguing, because I'm still real happy my daughter's born, we're not arguing. We're going back and forth a little bit, a little discussion, and I said, well, you know, I'm taking a language class, and there are people in there named Mohammed, which I find a little confusing. Or I should say, he also said, the reason you can't name her Versteeg is because it might confuse someone who's taking her information down the road. So I said, well, there's people in my language class from Morocco named Mohammed. And I said, and he said, well, we respect other people's cultures and religions. And I said, well, I'm from America. And he looked right at me and he goes, but your daughter is Dutch, and you cannot name her Versteeg for a middle name. And I just couldn't believe it, and there was no way I was going to go back to my wife in the hospital, because at this time, we had only lived here for 2 years, and I had a lot of problem with the language. Even though this guy was speaking English, I said, my wife is going to just think I screwed up. You have to call her in the hospital to tell her. And he goes, I can't call your wife in the hospital. I said, I'm not moving from this line. Now there's people behind me. I'm not moving from this line until you call my wife and explain to her exactly why we can't name her Sophia Versteeg Baker like we want to. And I basically made him call her at the hospital. I gave him the number. I'm not kidding you. He's like, hello, mevrouw Versteeg. This is the guy at the gemeentehuis and blah, blah. It's all in Dutch. My wife is from the Netherlands. When he tells her, I hear her over the phone, like he's on the other side of the counter. She's screaming at him. I mean, just going freaking bananas. So I said, listen, I'm going to call my wife on my cell phone. Can I just come back to you when I'm done? Yeah, no problem. So I call my wife, and she's just bullshit, and she says, well, I don't know what to do. He will not let us name her what we want to. And we discussed it, and I said, well, we can't give her my mother's name because her, my wife's mother would be angry. If we use my wife's mother's name, my mother would be angry. And so we basically said, the whole irony of the thing, she's not going to have a middle name. So basically, my son was born in the United States and has a very Dutch name for his first and second name. And my wife was born, my daughter was born in the Netherlands, and she can't have a Dutch name. I mean, it's just so ironic. And she couldn't have it because of the bureaucracy here. And so I went back up to the counter, and he goes, so, what do you want to name your daughter? And I said, I want to name her Sophia Versteeg Baker. But instead, we'll name her Sophia Baker. And the guy said, well, you should probably have a middle name. And I just stared at him. Not too happy at the time. I was a little bit grumpy by this time. I'd already been there for like an hour and a half. And he goes, Sophia Baker it is. And that's what I just had to explain to my daughter, why she does not have a middle name and my son does. Just one of those little lovely bureaucratic things here in the Netherlands. I'll talk to you guys later.